morning and welcome to our vocational rehabilitation informational series. Today we're honored to have a financial planner, Andrea Burkhardt, from the Burkhardt Agency here to tell us about long-term care and some retirement planning. We're very fortunate to have had her time to do this, so I'm going to turn it over to her. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having me, Jeff. My name is Andrea Burkhardt with Burkhardt Financial Group. I am a local business. I'm located up in the square across from the courthouse. Been doing this for 18 years. I live here, I work here, and I'm very involved with the community, so thank you for having me. Today we're going to talk a little bit about retirement income strategies and just retirement strategies altogether. We're going to touch a little bit on retirement income planning, taxes, Social Security, healthcare and long-term care planning, and then anything else that comes along the way. So thank you. So when we're working, we're accumulating money in our 401k or 403b or 457, and I always like to take a look at Mount Everest. This is going to be a Mount Everest, okay? So when you're planning to climb Mount Everest, people plan for years, both emotionally and financially, on how am I going to get up on Mount Everest. The same goes for retirement planning. Most people spend 30, 40 years working. It used to be that somebody might stay with the same employer for 30 or 40 years. But today, the younger generation tends to move 7, 8, 9 times in their working years. But nevertheless, when we're climbing up Mount Everest or when we're in the accumulation stage, we're basically a lot of times just putting the match in that our employer offers. And sometimes maybe if we get a raise, we'll put a little bit extra in. But we spend 30 or 40 years accumulating the money and climbing up Mount Everest. So the two goals that we have is, accumulating money and making sure that we're well invested in a good portfolio. What I see a lot of times is people don't know what to put their money in, so they're doing target funds. There's absolutely nothing wrong with a target fund. In fact, a lot of times that is a default mutual fund. A target fund is basically a group of stocks and bonds managed by American Funds or Fidelity or whatever carrier it is. But they're basically looking at your time horizon. So if you're 25 years old, you've got 40 years ahead of you roughly. So that could be a target fund of 2065. If you're 65 and you're about ready to retire, it could be a target fund of 2025 or 2030 depending on your risk tolerance. We always like to look at what is your risk tolerance. We do an investment profile so that we can see what your risk tolerance is and adjust your portfolio accordingly. When you're a mountain climber though, and if we think again of this as Mount Everest, the most deaths occur not on the ascent, but on the descent. And most people that are training to climb Mount Everest don't plan for the descent. They're mostly focusing in on the ascent. So if we look at the accumulation stage in retirement, it's kind of the same way. Most of us spend our whole working careers accumulating our money to the retirement, which would be the summit of Mount Everest, but we don't think about all the risks in retirement, and we'll talk about some of those today. If most of the deaths occur on the descent of Mount Everest, we also see there's roughly 19 risks in retirement when you retire. And so we'll talk about a few of those today. So, which of the following risks do you think might be the hardest to overcome? So risks in the ascent or the accumulation stage, or risks in the descent. And there's definitely a lot more risks in the descent. So we basically can help you with both sides of the retirement planning. So, a lot of times folks are looking at pre-retirees, risk tolerance. We talked a little bit, Jeff, about, what's going on with the market today, focusing in on asset accumulation, deferring tax. I mean, that's one thing that we don't think too much as we're building wealth. And, certainly when you're 25 years old, you have a lot more ability to recover from a down market than when you're 60 or 65, okay? So, you know, the closer you get to retirement, most people like to talk to their advisor, talk to maybe the plan providers, specialists, and say, am I properly invested for the next 5 years or 10 years? And there's no cookie cutter answer. And the reason for that is we have to look at the big picture, right? We have to look at everything that you have, not just that one piece of the puzzle. For retirees, you know, the thing to think about is lower risk or different buckets of money. A lot of times the old way was we got one big bucket of money and we're gonna pull 4%. That doesn't always work so well if the market is down and you're pulling more than what you need to from that portfolio. So what we like to do is get the big picture of, if you're married, both of your assets, your home, your other assets, your bank accounts, etc. So we can look at the different buckets of money and see how they're going to be taxed in retirement and how a downturn in the economy could affect that bucket of money. Ways to seek and reduce taxes. This is something most retirees don't think about, but taxation of your dollars can be very detrimental in retirement. So while you're working, you have income coming in. Your employer is paying you income. If you're a business owner, you have income coming in from your business. I always tell people, you know, as a business owner, there's only 3 things that will happen with your business. You die with it, you close it down, or you sell it, or find a way to do like an ESOP with your employees. As an employee of an employer, there's gonna come an end date where you say, you know what, I've got my 30 years in with TCRS, or, you know, I'm just done. I always tell people, you kind of know when you're done with working. It might be a gradual thing, or it might be you wake up one morning and you say, you know what, I think I'm gonna retire. Maybe not today, but I think this is what I wanna do. And it's just really you know, maybe something's happened with your spouse where there's a health issue, or maybe, you know, you just decided there's new management coming in and this would be a good time for me to exit, okay? But during retirement, your income is coming from you, everything that you've accumulated, and that's where we like to look at what different income streams do you have coming in retirement. And we sit down with our folks at the office and say, okay, let's look at Social Security. I was with a couple last week. He's an expat. He's back in the States for a couple months, but his wife is from England, and she didn't think that she was eligible for Social Security. I said, I believe you are, because you've been married to your husband for over 10 years, and you've paid into Social Security with some of the jobs that she's had. I said, why don't you go to ssa.gov and pull your Social Security statement, and please send it to me before the next meeting. So I was able to get both of their Social Security statements before our meeting this week. So Social Security is one of the main income streams for most people in retirement. Some folks will also have a pension, and then the biggest part of some people's retirement income will be their 401k, IRA, or investment accounts or personal savings. So what are some of the biggest concerns that people have in retirement these days? Market volatility, hands down. Even over the last few months, market's been very volatile, but we haven't had too many calls, and we've called our clients as well. But you know, if you know what you're in and you have a well-balanced portfolio, you're really looking at a time horizon, because what comes down will come up again. And if you pull out at the wrong time, you might not ever recover from that loss. Number 2, the impact of taxes. Where this really plays out is when you have to start taking required minimum distributions, and that is with your qualified money. So 401k turns into an IRA, or if you had a 403b or 457 goes into an IRA, but you haven't paid money, or a SEP or a simple IRA for business owners, but you haven't had to pay taxes on that money because you took it as a pre-tax contribution. But when you turn 73 or 75 at RMD, and depending on your age, you're either going to have to take it at 73 or 75, depending on your birth year. But then the government tells you what you have to take out of that bucket of money. And for some people and for most people, it puts them at a different income tax bracket. So now all of a sudden you're having to take out $15,000, $30,000, $60,000. Even I have one client who's gonna have to take out $80,000 because he has a huge portfolio. And it's kind of backwards because it starts at a low divisor or a higher divisor, and then it keeps going down, so the amount that you have to take out is more. And it basically peaks out at around 90, okay? So it's not a very efficient way to spread your taxes over your lifetime, especially in your older years, but it's just the way that it's been designed. So Uncle Sam's gonna get, their tax money based on the accumulation of your asset, and it's December 31st of the year that you have to start, which is at 73 or 75. And then every year it will basically measure what you have in those accounts and what you have to take out. Another big concern is outliving your income. Listen, most of us today are going to live another 20, 30 years in retirement. Actuarially, as a woman, you're probably gonna live into your 90s. Men are probably gonna live into their mid-80s. So if you retire at 62 or 65 or 67, you're probably gonna live 20 to 30 years in retirement. Back when Social Security started, people were retiring with a pension and Social Security at 62, and they were living 10, 15 years. Now we have to plan for a lot longer. So that's a big concern for a lot of people, is outliving your money. I'm gonna touch upon this a little bit later, but paying for medical and long-term care expenses, huge amount of money that can be spent in retirement on medical and long-term care. And when I say huge, I'm talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Unexpected costs and expenses, if you think about inflation, it's been a big concern for all of us in the last few years. But when you have a fixed income, every dollar counts. And then losing a loved one's Social Security. If you, my husband and I, if we're both pulling Social Security and he passes away, you don't keep both of those Social Securities. You keep the higher of the two. So now all of a sudden, if you're depending on both of those incomes to pay your bills every month, you might have a problem if there's no other assets. So when you're accumulating money, the impact of taxes can definitely affect your retirement net. And we talked about the loss of a spouse and contribution. This is a very interesting scenario. If you have a dollar that doubles every year for 20 years and there's no tax, you're gonna have roughly about $1 million, $1,048,000, okay? But if you have the same dollar that doubles every year for 20 years and you're paying 24% tax, you're gonna have an accumulation of roughly $81,000. So tax can erode wealth, and that's something that most people don't really understand. Every time you spend that dollar at the grocery store, at the gas station, at the restaurant, you're getting taxed on that dollar, right? So most of our money is either in a pre-tax bucket, we talked about that with 401ks, SEPs, Simples, IRAs, where you're paying tax later in retirement years, or you're getting taxed on that money every year, CDs, bank accounts, every time you spend the dollar. And so what we see is that a lot of people don't have money in the after-tax bucket. You pay tax once, but then you throw it into the after-tax bucket. And I'm going to we'll come back to the spousal income. So here's a retirement savings. So Mr. and Mrs. Jones retire. They're both pulling Social Security. Mrs. Jones started at 62. Mr. Jones started at 67. They've got about $5,000 coming in a month. Mr. Jones is about $3,500 and Mrs. Jones is about $1,500. Unfortunately, women do earn less with Social Security payments than men. Just the way it is. They haven't changed that. But now Mr. Jones passes away and now there's only $3,500 coming in, not $5,000. So what is Mrs. Jones going to do? And hopefully she has a large enough IRA account or savings to basically dip into if she needs it. What we see a lot of times is people will downsize. Maybe they're in a 4,000 square foot home and they've raised their children in the home. But a lot of times, if husband and wife are working together and keeping up the home, keeping up with the yard work, the landscaping, and everything else that goes on, it works. But if one spouse isn't there anymore, or if one spouse is disabled, like my husband had a stroke 6 years ago, he's not able to help me anymore with the yard. So we have to hire out help, and I'm having to do a lot myself. So a lot of times people will downsize to be able to lower costs, create less stress with things that have to be done. And I see a lot of my widows going into condos or zero lot lines so they don't have to worry about it. I'm going to talk just a little bit about this. Whole life insurance is just a way to not only replace Social Security income, but it's also a way to grow some tax-free money. And there's not a lot that's discussed about permanent life insurance. When you're younger and you're raising kids, a lot of people want to have term insurance and invest the rest, but there's still a gap in planning if one income falls away. So we call this, let's replace your spouse's Social Security income so that you don't have that gap. And this is a way that you can do it. Even if you don't need it, it's a great way to leave a legacy, as well as create another bucket of money that you can pull from without having to be taxed on it like you would your IRA account. So tax deferred growth plus tax-free access gives you more money to use in retirement. Retirement accounts do have contribution limits with permanent life insurance or whole life insurance. There's also variable universal life insurance. You don't have a limit on what you can put in. So it's just really a valuable part of your strategy for many reasons: legacy, tax-free accumulation, access to your money at any time. It can be used as a supplemental retirement income or a replacement for Social Security if your spouse should pass away. Volatility, we talked about inflation and deflation, interest rates. So this basically shows that at the end of the year balance, if you're taking out a distribution out of your account and you have no other bucket of money and you're taking out, I think it's 4%, at the end with market volatility at 85, you've run out of money. If you have another bucket of money, we call that a buffer asset. So if the market's down, you pull out of that buffer asset instead of your IRA account, you're still going to have $375,000 in your IRA account, and you will also have life insurance to leave behind. So flexible income equals freedom in retirement. And I always say the happiest retirees are the folks that have a great bulletproof strategy for retirement income. If you're worried about what the market's doing every night because you're pulling from that bucket of money and that's the only bucket of money that you have, you're probably going to get stressed when the market goes down, because you do have the ability or possibility of outliving your income if you don't have alternate strategies. So what we try to do with our clients is sit down and say, okay, let's take a look at everything. I give 25-year-olds a budget sheet, and I give 55-year-olds budget sheets, and say, listen, let's look at the basic expenses. What paycheck do you need every month to cover your expenses when you stop working? And then I also like to look at a play check. What play check do you need every month or every year to have some fun in retirement? If you retire at 65, the next 10 years are your go-go years, right? What do you want to do in retirement? Do you want to want to buy an RV? Do you want to go traveling across the United States? Do you want to spend more time with grandchildren? How about golfing? How about pickleball? What does your retirement look like? And listen, every day is a Saturday. I mean, one of the great people that I listen to is Tom Hegney. Says, when do you spend your most money? Most people spend their most money on a Saturday. Well, every day in retirement's like a Saturday, because you're not, you have a lot of time now to do what you want to do. Even gardening is expensive. I mean, you go to Lowe's and buy dirt and flowers and this, you're gonna walk out with $200-300 worth of costs, right? So a lot of folks are spending, probably close to what they were making or spending in their working years. But we want you to have fun, because those next 10 years are so important. As long as you have your health, you can do all the things that you've been planning for. But what happens if something does happen with your health? Or what happens if you're spending more time going to the doctor's offices than doing those go-go year things that we talked about in the meeting? And I see that happening too, is a lot of folks, when they stop working, now all of a sudden have health issues. You've got to stay active in retirement. You've got to have goals. You've got to have things to wake up for every day. And just an important part of the planning process. So we talked about erosion of savings before taxes, after taxes. And we want to try to find a way, like with life insurance, believe it or not, if you have that buffer asset, you're going to have 90% of your net coming in versus 70% because of taxes. So it's just a great way to maximize your savings. Some other benefits of life insurance or permanent life insurance is creditor protected. You have accumulation that's tax-free. You can get to the money if you need to on a tax-free or tax favorable basis. What I like about it is legacy. You can basically use it during retirement, but you're still going to have something to leave behind to your beneficiary and to your heirs. So let's talk a little bit about Social Security. One of the things that I see happening, and we have a Social Security calculator that we can run for you, but so many people pull Social Security too early. And there's no cookie cutter answer for this either, okay? My husband started at 62. He's older than I am. He's 13 years older. So it just made sense for him to take it at 62. And we had young kids under the age of 18, and we were able to get an amount for the children until they turn 18. So that was just a great benefit for us. But for me, I will definitely have to wait until 67 or 70 if I can, because if he passes away, which actuarially, he's probably gonna pass away before I do, I wanna have the highest amount of Social Security for my base of my retirement income. But again, everybody's situation is different, okay? So make sure you sit down with a good financial planner, advisor that can kind of look at big picture planning. We would love to be able to help you. We're located on the square. But the Social Security is, think about a three-legged stool. A three-legged stool is a lot more stable than a two-legged stool. A three-legged stool is Social Security, pension, and your personal savings. Used to be that Social Security and pension was a majority of your retirement income. But today that pension has gone away for most people. So you need to, make sure that your other assets, now I know here in Tennessee, you have Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System, which is an excellent, well-funded retirement pension. And a lot of my clients are professors at Tech or in the school system or work for municipalities or for the state. They have a great, almost 50% of their highest 5 years that will be part of their three-legged stool. But people that don't have a pension, they have to make sure that they save enough in that 401k bucket as well as personal savings. Some of my business owner clients have real estate, have businesses, so that will be maybe part of their retirement income if they plan properly, because most business owners don't really think about what am I going to do to create my business or sell my business or turn it over to employees so that I have an income stream coming in for retirement. So this was an interesting question. How many people do you think will live into their hundreds in the United States? 60,000, 70,000, 80,000, 90,000, or 100,000? And this is really crazy. It's 101,000. So more and more, I mean, if you just look at obituaries in the Herald Citizen, you'll see that most ladies are passing away in their 90s. If you go into a nursing home in our area, the majority of people in a nursing home are ladies. Ladies do live longer, and we are living longer in general. Even we might be sick, have blood pressure issues, heart issues. We just have a lot of great medicine now and great procedures that keep us alive for longer. So are you ready for a long retirement? We've already talked about this, but your career, from age 30 to 65 is 35 years, but you do have a great probability of living 20 to 30 years in retirement. Longevity risk is probably one of the biggest concerns that folks have in retirement, outliving their money with longevity, market risk, and this is something you really need to plan on. Most people would like to have a pension. If they don't have a pension, then there's ways that you can create a pension with some of your pre-tax money. So what we like to look at sometimes, and again, this doesn't work for everybody, but if you need, let's say, $5,000 in retirement per month for your paycheck and your playcheck. Now the playcheck could go away if you wanted it to, but we encourage people to spend those 10 years, 5 years, 10 years in retirement, your go-go years, to do the things that you want to do, because in the next 10 years are your slow-go years. And then 10 years after that, if you're fortunate to have 30 years in retirement, those are your no-go years. I mean, I don't know if you know a lot of people in their 80s or 90s that are traveling around the world. Now there are some people, but most people are doing the majority of their go-go year retirement fund stuff in their 60s and let's say up to mid-70s. So we want to make sure that you don't run out of money, and we like to look at the big picture. You can create a guaranteed income paycheck and a playcheck with some of your pre-tax money or your investment money, and that way it takes the pressure off the portfolio. Because as we've seen in a previous slide, if you're just taking everything out of one bucket, and the market is down and it's very volatile, or maybe inflation has caused you to need more money from that bucket, you could run out of money. Or if you had a long-term care expense that you didn't plan for, you could be taking big chunks out of the bucket. So we like to look at, what do you need for retirement, paycheck, playcheck? Let's let the rest of this money grow. And then you want to have, let's say, medium bucket for emergencies. So as we get older, women need about 3.7 years of long-term care or extended care, and men need an average of 2.2. My husband has defeated the odds. He's had a stroke in May of 19, and he's still alive today and still receiving care today, so 6 years. Why has he lived longer than most people post-stroke? I have the answer. He's at home. He has good care from me. I'm the caregiver on the weekends, mornings, evenings, and then we have 8 hours of care during the day. He has excellent caregivers during the day, so I can continue to work my practice, know that he's in good hands, and he's in his own environment. And people that are in their own environment will live longer. Now, if we went from, he had the stroke in May, came home in August of 19. If we would have put him directly into an assisted living facility or a nursing home, I am 100% convinced he would not be alive today, okay? So it's not just, paying for the care, but how do you want to be taken care of? And this is something we had to sit down with the family and talk about, because I knew that I didn't want him in the facility, okay? The cost of care, and these are around the country, but I can tell you in Cookeville or the Upper Cumberland, home health care is $30 an hour to $35 an hour now through an agency, okay? We pay close to $30 an hour. There's a new company that's just opened up in Cookeville, and we've got rates from them, and they're $33 to $35 an hour, okay? Assisted living is about $8,000 a month, and nursing home care is anywhere between $12,000 and $16,000 a month. Now, my husband is being taken care of at home, but let's just say that I couldn't take care of him at home anymore. The next step for him would not be assisted living. Why? Because in order to go in an assisted living facility, you need to be able to be ambulatory. You need to be able to get out of your bed by yourself, in the shower, get dressed, and walk to the dining room for supper. He can't do that. So for him, from home, it would be home to nursing home. So we would be looking at $10,000 to $12,000 to $16,000 a month for nursing home care. Obviously, that would really be a problem because our long-term care insurance, although we have an unlimited bucket of money, it caps out at about $5,500 a month, which is about what we're paying for home health care right now. So what do? I'm going to show you a video that I believe will be very beneficial for you to see.
If you do meeting room, that's the best Wi-Fi.
Meeting room?
Yeah.
What's the,
You should just connect.
okay, thank you.
Sure.
I did have it up before. Let me ask if there's any questions in the meantime before we play this last video.
So Andrea, is obviously it's better to start investing when you're younger. Is there a point of no return? Let's say somebody's in their 50s and that, too late for them?
No, absolutely. I mean, you just have to think about like what is my retirement income stream going to look like in retirement. Some of my clients have, the word today is side hustles. They might have farm with row crops or cattle, or maybe they have a few rental incomes. Maybe they have a side business, doing graphics or whatever it is. But you have to ask yourself, at what point do I want to stop working, and then what is my retirement income going to look like? If it's just going to be Social Security, let's just say for husband and wife, you might just be able to get by. But it depends on what debt you have. That's another thing that we didn't talk about is, if you have a mortgage and you have maybe a car payment and you have other expenses, and let's say your Social Security coming in from both of you is $4,000 and you need $3,600, there's not a lot of wiggle room in there for inflation. So every dollar that you can accumulate, even if it's just $100,000, will help, in case you need an extra chunk of money, for that month or that year. Let's say your HVAC unit goes out. Let's say you need a new roof. And that's another thing with downsizing is not only are you reducing your costs, hopefully you won't have any other expenses, right? Because when you own a house, there's going to be other expenses, right? Every year. Any other questions?
I know you talked about whole life. Is that the same? No difference of when you were to get into that, or
Sooner that you can start, the better. Because any type of life insurance that you have in your older years, you have to go through insurability. There isn't such a thing as guaranteed insurability unless you have like a benefit program that's offered through your employer, which we do offer. But the sooner you start, the better. But I have some clients right now that are starting in their mid to late 50s and doing like a 5-pay or 10-pay where it's completely paid up. They're kind of overfunding it. They have extra money right now and they're able to get the life insurance, but then they have a benefit that's going to be there forever. And typically when you put $1 in, if it's properly structured, by year 8, 10, you're gonna have all your money back out in the cash value bucket, but you're also gonna have that life insurance bucket. And then with the participating whole life contract, New York Life is a company that's been around since 1845. We do pay a dividend, although I can't say our dividends are guaranteed, but we've been paying a dividend for over 170 years every year. Last year we paid $2.5 billion. Your cash value bucket's going to grow every year for the rest of your life. So a lot of folks, again, will use this as a supplemental retirement income. They can use it as a kind of a bank account that they can get to in case of an emergency, but they're always going to have something to leave behind for their loved one.
What's your thoughts on this? May be outside of your purview, but as people get older, they haven't thought about retirement or that, and then they hear about like reverse mortgages and things like that. Is that sound maneuvering for retirement, or? Yeah,
there's reverse mortgages can be a tool, but it's kind of like buying a car. There can be some good cars and not so good cars. There's some good annuities and not so good annuities. There's some good life insurance and not so good life insurance. If you have the right reverse mortgage company, it could be a great tool to give you some more income in retirement and still have an asset when you pass away. But some of them are not so good where you might not have that asset anymore.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, since I can't get the Wi-Fi to work, go to burkhartfinancialgroup.com and you can view the story of Terry's stroke and what we've had to do as a family to plan for our long-term care. In 2000, I started with New York Life in 2007. In 2008, we purchased our long-term care insurance. He did not want to do it, but we did purchase it, and 10 years later, he needed it. And since his stroke, New York Life has paid over $350,000 of benefit to our family for his care. It has to be a discussion that you have with yourself and or your spouse, because if you don't have a plan for your care, the government will tell you how that is going to happen, meaning they will have state recovery. If you think about Alzheimer's or dementia, that would be a nursing home or a memory care unit in an assisted living facility. You're looking at least $10,000 a month. So is your portfolio strong enough to be able to withstand $120,000 coming out of it a year for X amount of years? The other thing that I would suggest is there's a couple of great attorneys in town that specialize in elder care planning, Medicaid planning. Again, there's no cookie cutter answer for all of you here today, okay? However, you need to look at, do you have your wills in place? Do you have your powers of attorney in place? Do you need a revocable trust? Do you need a special needs trust if you have a spouse that has special needs, meaning dementia, Alzheimer's, a disability like my husband? Do you need an irrevocable trust? Are there other things that you can do to preserve your assets if there should be a long-term care need? But the time to do it is today, not 5 years from now or 10 years from now, because in some cases, maybe there's something you can do to put that farm or that property that you've inherited from your family from a long ago into an irrevocable trust so it's protected, but there is a 5-year look-back period. If you contact my office, emails Andrea at burkhartfinancialgroup.com. I will send you a list of attorneys here in the area that are specialized in this type of planning, okay? So again, it's just really sitting down with the folks that understand the whole planning process and getting recommendations. And sometimes I have AARP clients that call me because I am an AARP long-term care specialist. Sometimes we review their medical first and then their financial, and I can see that either financially or medically they're not really suitable for long-term care insurance. And sometimes I say you need to go see an attorney and get your affairs in order with the attorney. Because if you don't have your basic planning, your estate planning in place, you're gonna have a problem. You know, because if you don't have it in place, guess what? The state of Tennessee will tell your family and your loved ones how it's gonna work, and that's called intestate. Any other questions? Thank you very much for having me today. BurkhartFinancialGroup.com, and I'm at 320 East Broad in Cookville, and I do work by appointment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrea.